morning. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. Today we're going to talk about a great Canadian classic. It is The Swamp Angel by Ethel Wilson, and it's just a 5 out of 5. If it could be 6 out of 5, I would give it 6 out of 5. I just love this book. I really liked Wild Geese that I spoke about a little bit earlier. That's another Canadian classic, but this is it's very different in the sense that in that book we've got a family with dynamics that we're looking over, and they're in the land of the farmland with there's issues of bullying and acquiescence and submission and struggling to survive and being outlookers, outsiders looking in, and so there's just so many things going on in that book. This book, although it's shorter, makes that book look like an Archie comic book because this is so layered and so nuanced. It is the book that for readers who really like to dig in deep and have books with multiple layers, many nuances, this is an ideal book. There's hardly any plot really. It's about Maggie Lloyd, and she's in a marriage that it's not really clear why she got into the marriage. She just kind of made a mistake in judgment, and she's truly unhappy. And so in the first chapters, and with no spoilers, she is trying to get away from this marriage. And this is when we meet her second husband, Edward Verdu, who is just, I don't know, kind of a what would you say, sort of a couch potato of the 50s. and he just doesn't get it. He doesn't understand relationships or women or partnerships. I mean, he really just doesn't get it. And Maggie is a woman whose first marriage was very successful, very happy. They had a child, and things went wrong, obviously. So she's lost her daughter, she's lost her husband, and this second marriage is just a fiasco. Now, it's not dramatic in any kind of a way. It's a very, what would you call it? There's a certain monotone of plot to this book in the sense that Maggie's decided to leave the marriage. She's got a plan in place. Once the plan is in place, she executes it. And what she's decided to do, that as an avid fisherwoman, and she she ties flies, which is the little things you put on the end of the hooks when you're going fishing, fly fishing. It attracts the fish's attention. So she's managed to save some money, and she's decided she's going back to what she knew best, which were being out in the woods of New Brunswick, but in this case she's moved to British Columbia, and she's going to find work in a fishing lodge somewhere, and that's her game plan. She heads north to Hope, BC, and the lakes in and around that area. And so the setting is very real. Ethel Wilson is describing the land around her when she was writing in the 50s. And Maggie gets what she's looking for. She finds a job in a lodge, and she's with the, Hagar Gunnarsson and his wife Vera and their son Alan. It's a slightly failing lodge in the sense that Hagar has had an accident, so he's not as physically able as he was when they first took on the lodge. And his wife Vera is just a chronically unhappy, jealous, insecure woman. Alan is just a typical boy. And what happens is Maggie comes in, and she is not trying to save their world. She's trying to save her world. And one of the interesting things about Maggie is that she's a woman of potential, and she wants to realize her potential. And not in a sort of aggressive kind of, I'm going to be me kind of a thing, but just in a very calm, even, flat-footed kind of a way. This is who I am, this is who I was, this is who I am going to be. I am going to be where I love to be, and it's in the woods, and it's fishing. And it's not a very exciting life at all. And yet, it is who she is. She is one of the really authentic female characters that I've come across in many years, because she's not trying to be a doctor, she's not trying to be a society woman, she's not trying to be the head of the PTA or get this great husband material, you know, and mold him to whatever. She wants to be who she is, and that's someone in nature, doing things with nature, and living a simple life that allows her to facilitate that. So what do we have here is sort of a really tight vignette of all these different characters. I should also mention Nell and Hilda, who Severance. Nell is the mom and Hilda's the daughter, and Maggie is friends with Hilda. But Nell is sort of the craggy, cranky matriarch in a sense, with a cigarette hanging out of her mouth most of the time. And so she dispenses with good advice on occasion, and on occasion makes real blunders herself. So she's a very interesting side character to the action. And Hilda, the friend, is someone who helps, not directly, but indirectly helps Maggie make the break from her husband. And that's through just kind of, well, because he's a simpleton in a sense, they misdirect him away from Maggie. And so she's able to make her escape with a fair amount of success. So that's the plot line. But what we have here is an exploration of the Canadian wilderness and British Columbia, mountain scenes, water scenes, river scenes. We've got an incredibly astute observation of nature. Ethel Wilson observes, you know, everything from the eagles and osprey to the fish, the bottom of the mucky lakes. So she's through all strata of nature, and not so much in the wintertime. I would say it's mostly sort of May to September, October that we are really with the different families. Now, we also have got this really interesting exploration of people's emotions, and one of the stronger emotions in the book is the question around jealousy, what it is, what it does, its conflict. How can you resolve this kind of a person's thinking process? How do you work around, or how do you work with? And so not only do we get to see the characters' interaction in the world of jealousy, but we also get the author doing a sort of top-down pondering about what jealousy does, and or humiliation, or anger, or grief. And so she explores the emotions in a very poetical, linguistic kind of a way. There's just a beautiful, sort of a beautiful horizon line of the plot, and then we've got really the action of the emotions kind of curving through the horizon line, kind of like one of those math moments. And then we've got this scattering of dots and stars and sparkles that are the bits and pieces of nature, the actions of an osprey and an eagle fighting for a fish that the osprey has just caught, or perhaps the fish at the end of the story exploring something that has fallen into the water. So it's just so layered, and for people who like symbolism. Now, I'm not a great one for symbolism, because, you know, as time passes, one person's angel meaning is completely shifted by another, and you find out, oh, that's not an angel, that's a swan. And oh, that's not a swan, that's a god that's being turned into a swan because somebody got angry. So, you know, that kind of symbolism can morph over time. But if you, well, I've grown up in Canada all my life and have been strongly connected to the woods in one way or another, and so I can really see this. I love nature writing, so I can really feel this. I love sitting at our dock and watching the fish jump or the birds go by. We've got kingfishers and occasionally an osprey. So I can connect with this book in a way that maybe someone who's in the city can't. But if you've got a vivid imagination, you can feel when it's cold, you can feel when the water's dripping, she just does a great job. I'm even motivated to go and find a recipe for applesauce cake. So she brings you into the story in a way that so many others don't. Now, from what I understand of my little bit of Canadian literature education, is that this is definitely a thing that was explored during these years, where authors definitely engaged with the land. The land often was the villain against which the characters had to fight against. Survival against the land, survival against relationships or within relationships. This is not a battleground. This is not the land testing Maggie. This is Maggie being herself in the land in the way that she feels, well, I guess, I don't know if you've ever read Wendell Berry, but it's going alongside being one with one's surroundings. So she's as one with the surroundings in the kitchen as she is in her cabin, as she is out on the lake. That doesn't make her a paragon. She's not some kind of fancy Dan, saint that we should all emulate. No, she's got her faults, and she has her, what would you say? She sort of has her limitations as well, in that some of them are self-imposed and some of them are just her nature as well. She certainly is not a paragon of virtue. So I just want to read you two things that they really struck me. Now, before I go away, do that, Ethel Wilson, when did she write this? This was written, I'm going to say this was written in the 1940s. She's an award winner. She's been awarded the Canadian Council Medal and the Lawrence Pierce Medal of the Royal Society of Canada in 1964. And she wrote many books, which are not listed here, but that's generally my game plan, is to go and find out what else she's written. And I'd say there's at least, I think there's at least 5 other novels that she has written. Okay, so here I wanted to read to you. Maggie became a coordinating creature of wrists and fingers and reel and rod and line and tension, and the small trout leaping, darting, leaping. She landed the fish, took out the hook, slipped her thumb, broke back the small neck, and the leaping rainbow thing was dead. A thought as thin and cruel as a pipefish cut through her mind. The pipefish slid through and away. It would return. Just like, that's just fishing. That's just being, it's in a boat. It's crazy. So we've got a afterwards by George Bowring, and then the afterword, I don't usually get impressed by the afterword, but this afterword is really quite good. It contextualizes Ethel Wilson in that she was really a bright light in the Canadian literature scene at the time, but dominated by men who just dismissed her. So the critics dismissed her, the male authors dismissed her, so she was not a hot topic in Canadian literature, but I think as the years go by, she's standing the test of time, unlike some of those men, don't we all know? So George Bowring puts that into context and puts some of this, he puts this book into the context of the land itself and Ethel Wilson's life. So we get a tiny biography at the tail end and how this book fits in with what was happening in her life at that time. So his concluding paragraph, I thought, was really just the duck's pajamas. Swamp Angel is a short novel and a highly complex one. On rereading it, we are rewarded with the assurance that we will never be able to tell anyone what it is all about. Wilson's feigned simplicity is the most complicated trick of all. For a careful reader, the text is as difficult as this world our home. So, jeez, he can sum it up really well, eh? Too bad I'm not Georgette Bowring. So that's my reading for the week. I really, really love this, and my game plan is to keep on reading Ethel Wilson, so you'll be hearing more about her. Remember, she's 6 out of 5, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true. Bye-bye.